Episode 50, and the Play of the Gods begins, Part 3. Go back in time a little. It was around when the Demon King of Brave Quests was defeated. Finally, a series of chaotic events was ended. Takuto, who watched the quarrel between Atu and Elfer sisters using the Eternal Nation's leader authority, sighs relief that the worst of the worst scenario didn't happen. It's over, right? Takuto let out a big sigh as he stood in a corner of the city, away from the government buildings where the Dark Elves had been evacuated and hidden to prepare for the invasion of enemy forces. I'm tired. Takuto let out another big sigh. He realized that Atu and the others had already been ordered to return, and if everything went well, they would return soon with the Elfer sisters. Elder Mortar and the Dragon Town reinforcement team had also changed course and were returning to their location. Despite many things to consider, Takuto had a little time now. How could he make the most of it? As he raised his head, feeling mentally drained, he suddenly noticed some guards around him. They were members of the warrior corps and continued to follow him to protect their lord and save Takuto in case of an emergency. Leave me alone for a while. Yes. But. He looked at them and noticed some anxiety still on their faces. The guards were confused. The king's command is absolute, but in this situation, it is hard to say that the danger has passed. It's natural for them to feel worried and confused. Takuto understands this, but he gave the same order again. Leave me alone. Excuse me. The guards hurriedly left the room, perhaps feeling embarrassed about their pathetic reaction. Takuto felt upset with himself when he realized that his tone had been stronger than he intended. After confirming that the guards had left, Takuto suddenly dropped himself onto the floor. That wasn't cool. He had overlooked important details, and now the situation had escalated badly. He realized it was his misjudgment that had led to this, and he had acted foolishly by pushing away the guards. As a leader, he knew that enemies could invade the territory, and he had not considered the morale of his army. He blamed himself for his actions, and it weighed heavily on his heart. He wondered how long he could act like a spoiled kid and let his guilt consume him. The dream of creating a happy nation had slowly collapsed, and his optimistic hopes had faded away. Isla. Takuto murmured. He wanted to talk with Isla more. He knew her well through Eternal Nations, though not as much as Atu. He was planning to get to know her more through actual interactions. What does she think of him? But his wish will never come true. Takuto is wondering if there's anything he can do, while feeling a sense of emptiness that is affecting him more than his physical exhaustion. However, he knows that it's nearly impossible to resummon a hero. While it's not entirely impossible, it's considered a last resort. There are certain conditions that need to be met to resummon a defeated hero, but if there's already a summoned hero or a two in the nation, it cannot be done. This means that the existence of Isla, the queen of all bugs, will never be seen again, no matter how much the Eternal Nations system is used. Miria, Ciaria. The twin girls have lost their mother forever, and that fact became a heavy burden for Takuto. He knows how much the Elfer sisters loved Isla and how they had already lost their real mother. He remembers their conversation when they told him with sad eyes that they should have died, and blames himself for betraying their trust over and over again. He realizes that what is lost will not come back no matter how he struggles. At this moment, Ira Takuto is undoubtedly a loser. Damn! Is he upset with himself? Or is he simply expressing his rage? Takuto stood up and banged the floor with his fist as soon as he couldn't take it any longer. If he experiences some pain, it may help to relieve the ache in his heart. He has always hated pain, but now he craves it in order to punish himself. But... Ha! A cracking sound echoes loudly as his fist penetrates the floor. For a moment, Takuto thinks, did the floor melt, but soon realizes it was a misunderstanding. The building's brand new wooden floor is cracked and broken from the part that Takuto hit. Wait. Takuto let out a scream as he saw the destruction caused by his fist, but that wasn't the only surprise. Unfortunately, Takuto's strike had shattered one of the supporting pillars beneath the floor, causing the building to collapse instantly in a chain reaction. Wah! 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 The buildings created by the Dark Elves are located high in the trees, based on their cultural style. As expected, the building collapsed, and what followed was a dramatic fall from the air to the ground, from a height of several tens of meters. The human body is not strong enough to withstand such an impact. For a moment, Takuto felt like floating, his vision blurred, and everything went dark. A shock struck his body, and he prepared for his second death. Ouch! Ouch! Ha! However, when he opened his eyes, he realized that the scenery around him had not changed. It doesn't hurt. He gets out of the pile of wood that made up the collapsed building and looks around. If he looks up overhead, he can see the Dark Elves buildings. Despite having fallen from a great height, he appears to be uninjured. Given the current situation, he is forced to come to a conclusion. Takuto stands up quietly, wearing a puzzled expression on his face. He realizes that the Dark Elf guards are rushing toward him with their authority as leaders and walks away to avoid the commotion. As he walks, he looks around, taking in his surroundings. Eventually, he reaches a spot a little ways from the city and finds a tree of an appropriate size. He lightly knocks on it a few times, as if checking something. The tree is an ordinary giant tree, larger than the others, but it looks eerie due to Mynoghra's cursed land effect. Takuto waves his hand lightly, and the tree breaks and collapses, causing the earth to shake with a loud sound. Oh, I see. So that's what it is. He glances at the falling trees and the surrounding trees, and then Takuto closes his eyes quietly. His quiet and strange act is a dialogue with himself. Similar to meditation, he delves deep into his own thoughts. He confirms the infinite possibilities of Ira Takuto's existence and the King of Ruin's power. The power was always within him, calmly waiting for the right moment to be used. Ha ha! Then I can win right away. Then I can do it from the start. From the start. Takuto opens his eyes and lets out a dry laugh as he brings his palm to his face. Everything seems so ridiculous, including his own stupidity. At the same time, it was the limit of his patience, and something inside Takuto had just broken. Let's talk about somewhere other than this place. There is a man with a strange fate who always boasts about his victories in the tournament sponsored by Eternal Nations Game Management, but always ends up in second place in the official online ranking. He looks to be in his late 20s, a good young man with a refreshing and cheerful impression. People would hardly think of him as a person who likes playing games. The man has moderately trained muscles, burnt skin, and a friendly smile. Currently, he is being interviewed at a coffee shop. Amid your busy schedule, you still spared some time for us. Thank you, Mr. Closer. You came all the way to the city center. It's really helpful. It's okay, I happen to have some time today. I don't think people from game magazines will come here. I'm kind of nervous. What are you talking about? You have an excellent track record in Eternal Nations. You can't be nervous because you are one of the famous players who are very busy every day, even in game distribution. You just too humble. If you said that I can't say anything back. The man's name is Closer. Of course, it is a username in the game, not his actual name. However, in reality, he is a young editor for a game magazine with a long history. Although the magazine has struggled with sales to some extent during the heyday of the internet, it still manages to survive in the industry due to its high-quality insights and information. This time, as a special project on Eternal Nations, they are interviewing famous players connected to esports, which have been getting popular recently. I really wanted Ira Takuto to come, but unfortunately I was rejected. After the greeting, the conversation continued in a friendly atmosphere, and the interview became more lively. When the editor spoke, Closer raised his eyebrows and urged her to continue quietly. Mr. Closer. Is the rumor true? Do you know anything? Well, I don't know. I used to want to see his face. But I've never met him until now. Ah, I see. In the player rankings of Eternal Nations, Closer has always been in second place, with Ira Takuto, a rumored unbeatable player, as the top-ranked player. The official tournament of Eternal Nations, a world-famous game title with many sponsors. It is known for its long matches, deep strategy, and exciting battles. To prevent fraud, players must compete from the location provided at the venue. The competition lasts several days, and during breaks, players are not allowed to leave the monitored hotel and must content with canned food. Even during breaks, it is forbidden to leave the building. As a result, there is conjecture that the player known as Ira Takuto may be unable to compete in the official event for some reason. For instance, major illnesses. As a result, Closer has consistently won the official Eternal Nations competition. Many skilled players participate in this competition, where numerous sponsors give away large sums of money in luxury products, and intense battles are fought every time. However, the outcome is based on the network rating of Eternal Nations, with slight differences. If Ira Takuto shows up, he will undoubtedly win the title. Even if Takuto somehow misses the championship, he will not be satisfied with second or lower rank. It was a rumor spread among Eternal Nations supporters, which is why Closer was not satisfied. So, I think it's a bit rude to ask you, who is called the king who can't be the real king? The secret of Ira Takuto's strength? Closer responds with an invincible smile. There is a reason why he doesn't get angry despite being given a nickname like that on the internet. It's not because of his personality, but because he admits that Ira Takuto is stronger than him. Anyone involved in the world of esports must have heard of Ira Takuto. Although not profiled in Eternal Nation, he has appeared in several other games under the same name, producing amazing results. The number of people who want to know the secret of his strength and the fans fascinated by his mysterious history is countless. Perhaps the editor also wants to write an article to serve those people. If she can't meet and interview her target, she has to ask someone close to him. Although it feels unpleasant, like he is being used, Closer doesn't want to take any risks that may cause him extra trouble and estrange him in the industry. That's right. He has a certain characteristic. Or it can be said as bad habit? And what exactly is that? Every time he plays, I'm not sure if he let go his hand or he take it too easy, he always make a naive decision, such as, well, like this maybe it'll be okay. He has such a bad habit. But if you did that in the early stages, you would lose in an instant, right? I know well that Eternal Nations is not an easy game. Closer nodded, giving the editor some credit. Closer recognized his ability as an interviewer to grasp a situation without needing detailed explanations. Closer believes that the interviewer would understand his next words, as he will give an accurate and honest assessment of Ira Takuto. That's why he's the best. As Closer closed his eyes, his brain replayed their previous game as if the monitor was in front of him. It was a skill that resulted from his thinking ability and game experience, allowing him to simulate past games. However, for Closer, it meant nothing because in every simulation, he was defeated by Ira Takuto. Closer acknowledged that Ira Takuto was the strongest player and the one who knew the most about Eternal Nations in the world. Despite being one of the top players, Closer looked up to the heavens and admitted his defeat. No one can surpass Ira Takuto who plays seriously. His serious tone caused the editor to gulp and fall silent. Time seemed to stand still as they sat in silence, the only sound being the clinking of melting ice in their glasses. Look, Mr. Closer. I have a suspicion that person is an AI developed by some company. I don't know what it is, but I suspect it's using some sort of cheat to maintain its strength. Closer recalled. How could he admit his defeat and Ira Takuto's power? the days when he chased after Ira Takuto's shadow like crazy. He only spoke to Ira Takuto once in voice chat. Ira Takuto's voice sounds so weak, was it really him? Closer doubted it because it felt unreal. Because of that, Closer felt doubts when he tried to identify his opponent. I know you're interested with Ira Takuto, but I have an advice for you. You should never offend him. The editor wanted to respond that such a thing would never happen, but the Closer's silent expression made him shrink like a frog staring at a snake. Sometimes one has to take risks for a story, but he felt that Closer could see right through him. Especially when he is enraged, it's the worst. I've been retaliated against and hurt in every way possible. I vowed never to get involved with him again. The editor was also curious about what had happened between Ira Takuto and Closer in the past. He considered the possibility of finding out and writing an article about it to increase sales and his position in the editorial department. However, when he saw the horrified expression on Closer's face, he realized that it would not be a good idea to pursue any further. I still get nervous when I hear his name. The editor guy nodded silently, realizing the seriousness of the situation, and decided not to ask any more questions. He noticed that Closer's hand was trembling. Mynoghra Royal Palace Emergency Meeting. A strange atmosphere pervaded the conference hall inside the Mynoghra Royal Palace as the Hiroatu, the Elfer sisters, Elder Mortar, and other VIPs in charge of national management gathered. Additionally, civilians and warrior captains were also present. And at the back of the hall sat Ira Takuto, the leader of Mynoghra and the King of Ruin, quietly observing. Then, Takuto-sama, we ask that you serve as judge for the violation of the Elfer sisters' orders and the sin against the great king's words. We seek your guidance in determining the appropriate punishment. Atu calmly presented the plan and sought Takuto's opinion. The Elfer sisters, who were the subject of discussion, stood against the wall, their demeanor reminiscent of death row convicts awaiting their execution. They understood the gravity of their actions and the violation they committed against the great king's words. Although their actions were driven by their emotions, they now realized that they should have returned to the Mynoghra capital and prepared a defense system to protect their important companions. Their mother had taught them the importance of protecting those with power, but they had betrayed her teachings. As a result, the sisters were ready to accept any punishment, even if it meant facing death. Nothing. They are not guilty. However, his words were different from what any of them had expected. It was a decision that overturned all of the two's expectations. But Takuto-sama, that decree does not maintain the discipline of the nation. Furthermore, in an emergency like this, people may misunderstand if we grant pardons to our subordinates too easily. Atu spoke up, stating that punishment for wrongdoing is essential to maintain discipline in their nation. While mitigating factors such as circumstances and services rendered can be taken into account, convicts cannot be released without any form of punishment. Such an action would send the wrong message to the people, especially in times of emergency. As everyone stared at Takuto in surprise, he shrugged as if he was slightly taken aback. With a quick motion of his hand, he changed the subject as if the previous issue had already been resolved. Maybe it was an emergency? I apologize to everyone for that. Atu and others looked surprised, their eyes widening. They began to stand up from their seats. I'm truly sorry. My carelessness and pride caused this situation. The king acknowledged his mistake and apologized to his subordinates. Oh, please stop. There's no need for the king to apologize. That's right. It's our own negligence that caused this, we're the ones who should apologize. The dark elves let out a frantic scream. This was not supposed to happen. There was only one thing that must not have happened, the king making a mistake. The king was an absolute being, and his subordinates were willing to sacrifice their lives for him. Therefore, the king could not be wrong. He could not admit his mistakes. It was the territory of the person who made a mistake, not the territory of the king. The people would not follow a king who was reduced to being just a person. The heavy responsibility of leading the people was too much for just one person. They had to pretend that the earlier words had never been spoken. Atu, who had stood up, sank back into her chair as if all the life had been drained out of her. The confusion had surpassed her ability to process it. No matter how much she thought about it, she could not come up with a solution. And no one had declared that the turmoil was over. And I promise you, I will bring Isla back to life. Really? Back to life? The light in the twins' eyes intensified. They didn't fully understand the significance of the king's apology, but they were now focused on their mother's revival. They had a strange feeling earlier, as if some kind of insect had communicated with them. But they had forgotten about it and were now asking Takuto about the plan. Takuto nodded in response to their question, but Atu quickly interrupted. Wait, Takuto-sama. How will you do it? Currently, reviving a hero is not possible. Atu was confused. Although she trusted Takuto, she couldn't understand his idea at all. As she had previously told her sisters, there was no way to revive the hero Isla. Takuto wouldn't have made promises that he couldn't keep. Did he make a mistake? Atu had some expectations that she didn't want to admit to. But the truth surpassed all of the girls' expectations. The people invited to heaven, eventually, they will live forever under the climax of happiness and infinite peace. Takuto spoke talkatively. Atu, who knows the meaning of his words, raised her face with surprise. There is no suffering, no pain. Even the dead are resurrected, and they meet again with their loved ones and share their happiness. Praise the victory, bless the joy of reaching a new dimension. Here, the gate of the kingdom of God was opened, and they have reached an eternal existence in the love of God. Takuto stood up quietly and spread his hands widely. Ascension victory. If this world refers to the system of eternal nations, I will definitely grab that victory. Anyone who loses will be revived. It was the line that flowed when a certain victory was achieved. It is called an ascension victory, a special victory that is also unusual in eternal nations, and is obtained after achieving multiple conditions. The problem was, it was very difficult to achieve that victory condition. The ascension victory is too difficult, and no player actively pursues it even in eternal nations. Only a few people are interested in trying it because of the bound play and the promotional video. In fact, although Takuto had tried several times, he always lost interest immediately. Then shows a peace victory or a conquest victory. The conditions for ascension victory are too strict. Even the creation of the premise regalia may lead to the intervention of other countries. Atu is the only person who understands, and she asks with a quivering voice. Certainly, under this victory condition, Isla's revival will come true. She doesn't know what the heavenly world looks like, but every dead person will indeed come back to life in that world. Intervention from other countries. Well, I'm sure there is. Yes, far from being good forces, the whole world will become the enemy. That even includes Fonkaven. The conversation continued between Takuto and Atu. The Dark Elves didn't understand everything they were discussing, but they could feel a strong pressure in Takuto's words. He spoke about a victory condition called Ascension, which is very difficult to achieve, but would result in the revival of the hero Isla. Takuto acknowledged that this victory would not be easy to obtain, and even a hero would struggle with the decision. The Dark Elves wondered what kind of reasoning led their king to pursue this choice. Despite their anxieties, Takuto reiterated his determination to achieve ascension. It's okay. Why? Why you judged it well okay? Takuto-sama. Because I'll kill everyone who gets in the way. Right at that moment, Atu was frozen in fear, and the Dark Elves felt fear deep in their souls. They understood that Takuto was not confused or overwhelmed by the repeated problems and was not talking about an impossible future in a state of panic. But instead, Takuto is just enraged. He's so angry. On the surface, he just seemed to be calm and talkative. No one knows where the source of that anger is. However, he is the king of ruin. They felt a sense of familiarity with it. This is the first time Takuto has shown his anger, and he doesn't direct it toward anyone in particular. All beings in that place feel his emotions. The pressure is so thick that it weighs down on them like a massive load. Cold sweat pours out of them, and they struggle to catch their breath. Even the most evil beings, like Atu, feel a chilling fear as if something is sitting right there. Listen carefully. The method is simple. No one knows why Atu and her colleagues are unable to speak, but Takuto speaks fluently. Ascension changes the world itself. Of course, all opposing entities will be altered as intended by the victorious nation, and sometimes they may even disappear. Therefore, a nation aiming for ascension victory is the same as declaring hostility to all other nations. Even alliances become hostile. The only way to avoid this is through merging or colonizing. Are they ready to destroy everything they've built up until now and still make that choice? Anger was the key, and the judgment of the Eternal Nation's top player who regained his original power was very simple. Conquer the world. The indescribable words made all the listeners feel a mysterious fear. Because it is difficult to achieve and maintain the conditions for an ascension victory. That's why I'll make everything that gets in the way disappear first. Takuto's plan involves corrupting the sky, cultivating all the earth, draining the oceans, destroying all living things, and slowly ascending the dimensions. There is no pacifist leader in this plan, and perhaps there never was. There are many things that can and must be done. Maybe it was never this clear before. Gasan suddenly, there was a loud noise, causing Atu and the others to tremble. Who would dare interrupt this tense situation? They looked around, trying to identify the source of the sound. It seemed to have come from behind Takuto. Many clattering sounds overlap. It's an emergency production by Takuto, a phenomenon that every member of the Mynoghra State Management Team has seen at least once. However, they don't understand what was produced. Although they were sure it was something solid from the sound, even with all their knowledge, they couldn't figure out the answer. Atu is the only exception. She realizes that it is a bullet, a small copper-colored one that has rolled under her feet, and lets out an involuntary gasp of surprise. From behind Takuto, handguns, machine guns, rifles, explosives, and other weapons from his previous world are created one after another. In his previous world, human life was very cheap in some areas, and tools made just to kill humans were also available at surprisingly low prices. Just like a little high-class grape. Takuto picks up a pistol from the weapons piled up like a mountain and observes it. Emergency production can produce anything as long as he still has magical power, and it only requires magical power. It doesn't consider the value of the good. The kingdom of God, the ability to produce goods from the previous world. With this tricky act, the rule was working wickedly. I might need more help from all of you from now on. He watched the gun as he read the manual, then nodded slowly. Nobody knows when he created the manual. As expected, it was possible to produce weapons with a much lower magical power cost. The lost magical power will be replenished within him. Every situation that forced him to feel bitterness whispered to Takuto to take revenge on this world. Honestly, I think it will be difficult, but if we united, we can do it. Of course, you all have worked hard until now, but please continue to follow to me. Takuto declares in innocent words like a child from nowhere. Hearing the words with terrifying pressure released by the king, his subordinates could only tremble and bow their heads. Come, we'll take over the world. If one day someone writes a history book, if there was a decisive moment that leads the world to perish, this might be the moment. The end is approaching moment by moment. Somewhere, a god without a name was laughing loudly.